This is the Build Your Path podcast, where we explore how people get into their careers in the built environment. Today's guest is Ryan Monahan. Ryan is a senior safety professional at Barton Malow Builders and has been in the industry for over 10 years. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Carter Machinery, Mid-Atlantic's full-service Caterpillar dealer. Learn more at cartermachinery.com. Welcome on into the Build Your Path podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pine, and my guest today is
Ryan Monahan. I'm a senior safety professional with Barton Malow Builders.
So welcome to the podcast, Ryan. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So if you don't mind just giving our audience an introduction, a little bit of your background, who you are, what you do.
Okay, sure. So like I said, I'm a senior safety professional with Barton Malow Builders. We're a national construction management firm who specializes in higher education, healthcare, sporting venues, energy, automotive, and industrial sectors. We're actually based out of Detroit, in Southfield, right outside Detroit. But I actually work out of our local Baltimore office and cover projects spread throughout the state of Maryland. I'm part of a 50-person safety team with about 2,500 employees nationally. I like to kind of explain it like I'm an OSHA employee or inspector for a private company when people ask what I do and don't really know much about safety. So my day-to-day really consists of, safety audit walkthroughs and inspections, training sessions, toolbox talks, stand downs, the occasional incident investigation, PreCon kickoff meeting, coordination meetings. And then overall, just helping analyze, solving and mitigating hazards on the job sites. But, that's kind of a coverall. Like I said, my day-to-day isn't always the same. I mean, in construction, it's never really the same depending on your position in the field. But I mean, it's literally different every day, which is one reason I really love what I do.
And you just mentioned PreCon. That would be pre-construction, right?
Correct. PreCon, I've been getting more involved in the far front end after projects are awarded, and getting in there with estimating and the project management team to look at the hazards and the scopes of work for all the subs and try to help, catch all that beforehand, because the time to catch those is not in the field, right, when they're putting it in. Yeah. Happens a lot more than you think, right? But the earlier we can catch it, the better it is for everybody. So I try to get more involved in the PreCon side as well to help the teams.
And I know a lot of people, a lot of younger people listen to this podcast. Can you kind of talk about, how you got to where you are now? What pathway did you follow in your early life?
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but yeah, it's interesting, I guess. So my interest in the built environment really began at an early age. So just like most kids, Legos, tree houses, I had the play tools and the play tool belt, right? Yep. Just like most kids, I love watching any construction equipment that I could find. I remember vividly, I spent a few weeks with my grandparents in New York one summer when I was in elementary school, and they had actually had a crew repaving their street that week. So literally the entire week I was outside in the summer, just watching the crews and talking with the guys, just really interested in what they were doing. I found that kids have a natural attraction to bright yellow equipment. I actually have a 2-year-old daughter myself, so I can attest to that. And they love equipment, no matter what kind. And even one time when one of my previous employers, we built a school in Annapolis right next to an occupied city playground. Almost every day, man, you'd have a whole group of kids just stand there at the fence watching the equipment. And then you had a couple that would actually go play, right? But you still had that herd of kids that would watch the equipment all day. So it was kind of funny to watch, just to see that kids are just, entranced by it. And then some of us just keep that interest thriving as we get older and you get more into it. And that's kind of what I did. So, I mean, my current safety manager position would probably kick myself for saying this, but in middle school, actually, my friends used to go to a neighborhood that was being built nearby, and we, go in at night and crawl through the buildings, and not the safest thing, right? Nobody wants to hear that kids are doing that. But, my friends and I would actually ride bikes out there, and then we'd explore it. I always thought it was cool to see, what was under the drywall, how things go together. And it also kind of stemmed from me, liking to take things apart, just normal like radios and stuff that were junk. I didn't always successfully put them back together, but I like to take them apart and kind of see the inner workings. So, and it's so hard to be, 17 or 18 at a high school and be like, this is what I want to do. This is my path. So, maybe let me attend a 4-year college and kind of go that route. That's kind of the norm, right? Everyone thinks about 4-year colleges and, you got to choose right out of high school what you want to do. I had that notion in high school, that when you chose your path, you kind of stuck with it. So,
right.
So anyway, as I got into high school, my interest kind of peaked with drafting classes. So we had, engineering and architecture and all that through the tech ed department at Severna Park High School, so Anne Arundel County. They had drafting courses, and these were like the original hand-drawn drafting. You were drawing your borders, you were using different pencils and erasers and T-squares and all that, so no CAD, right?
Right.
Which then kind of got me into, those were like the intro courses to architecture classes themselves. So I think nowadays they're looking at what STEM is kind of the big push, right?
For sure.
We didn't really have STEM then, but that's cool that they're going that way now. So my last year of high school, actually, a handful, me and a few of my buddies, after we took the initial architecture courses, we wanted to take some more, but they didn't actually offer any. So my professor or teacher actually went to the county and was like, hey, I got like 5 or 6 kids that want to take more classes in this field. So he ended up getting approval to make another class. So my last semester, it was like an honors architecture course where we basically just got more projects. They just gave us more to do because we were kind of on our own as it was, because a bunch of us got out half day. So we would take classes in the morning at the high school, and then I would go to community college in the afternoon and take some gen ed courses like math and English, I believe I took, to help get some gen credits out of the way. So the half day was great. And then after graduation in 2004, myself and those three of that handful of friends actually went to Anne Arundel Community College together. And we had it was kind of cool. So the head of the department, Mike Ryan at the time, had came over to the high school and talked about the program and how you could get a 2-year degree and transfer into a 4-year. And a lot of these schools they're partnered with. So it would put you in the 3rd year at that school. So you'd only have to do 2 more years, which was kind of cool to kind of get that connection with that local school. So we ended up going to Anne Arundel, and we lucked out. It was a brand new building that fall in 2004, brand new architecture building. Even had the copiers, the big color printers, the wood shop, the brand new drafting tables. So we were all excited to get in there together and kind of continue our path in architecture. So we've actually all of those guys are still in architecture today. I'm still connected with a few of them, so it's kind of cool. They still stuck with it. I kind of went a different route. So during my last semester at Anne Arundel, I worked full time at a architectural firm by the airport, and we worked on like retail fit out and food service CAD work kind of thing. So now this is actually where I quickly realized that a computer screen and desk was not for me. So, I loved drawing. I loved the parts and pieces of it, the sections, elevations, all that stuff. But I was actually losing my artistic drive, and wanted to be out in the field. So, the day-to-day watching it all come together, that was really what I wanted to do. And in architecture, you've got to be a special, in a special section of that to do the field management stuff. And even then you're not in the site that often. So that kind of helped me, it was a good experience, but it also kind of led me to, hey, all right, what else is out there and what other options are there for me? So I did earn my associates in architecture in 2007. And in architecture at the time, when you transfer, it's kind of hard to get into a program because a lot of kids start, at a 4-year from freshman year, right? So as a transfer, it's more difficult. So I took an extra semester because they don't usually let you in the spring, and I took some more classes in CAD. So I had a 2-year degree and an extra semester with some CAD classes. And I had applied all over the place, got into a bunch of schools. Some schools I got into put me in different programs because they didn't have openings. But at the end of it, I ended up at Ohio State because they ended up taking all of my credits from Anne Arundel. So, got my associates in architecture at Anne Arundel, transferred to Ohio State, and then I was placed directly into their architecture program as a junior, which was nice too. So that they took so many courses, I was able to transfer and not start from scratch. But about 2 weeks into that program, at about 2 a.m., I threw in the towel. I was working on a model, I believe, and I just didn't have it anymore. So it takes a lot of artistic drive and dedication to stick in that field. And
Mm-hmm.
I was exhausted, tired of trying to continue that path when I kind of knew it wasn't where I wanted to go. And I was kind of more worried about my parents and how they'd be, if they would be supportive or disappointed.
Yeah.
So they were a little disappointed, but after, talking it through with them and all that, I did gain some full support. So that was nice to have that, after I changed, not too often do you hear a kid calls you from college, 2 in the morning and says he's changing majors. Right. So, but luckily for me, Ohio State did actually have a construction management program.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was, you still get to be involved with the drawings and the built environment, but you're out in the field, or there's different paths as a project manager as well. But I knew that I wanted to kind of go a superintendent route, so I was lucky enough to get into that major, and they gave me a few weeks to catch up, because I did miss, it was almost 2 weeks into the quarter, and at Ohio State at the time was on quarters, so they're 10-week classes, so it's a lot of work to catch up with,
Wow.
as opposed to a semester.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that took some getting used to, but I mean, as soon as I was in there, I kind of knew this is just the personality of the people, the teachers, the classes were, I really loved it. And I was kind of glad that I was able to see early enough that that's where I wanted to go, and didn't end up like some people where they get a whole, bachelor's degree and then figure out like, wow, I don't want to do this anymore. What do I do? That's kind of where I ended up. I mean, luckily, like I said, they had the major. I was able to switch over. But I was really relieved, So after my first year at Ohio State, I did come back home and I interned with a large national general contractor. It was on a retail project in Annapolis. So being out in the field that summer really did help me cement that decision, that construction management was the right path, a lot of menial tasks as an intern, right? But I mean, you do get the hands-on experience, and you get that, in-person field experience. So I had a great team to learn from with them, at that general contractor, and they really had a good internship program. I worked a little bit in estimating for a couple weeks, and then the rest of the summer I was in the field. So fast forward into my last year at Ohio State, so 2010, I needed to get about 3 years, 3 years of the program to get my bachelor's, since I changed majors. So I got out in 2010. And during that last year, the construction program actually had an OSHA 30 course that they had offered to students, which was really great, because I mean, it's $800 at the time. It was probably more. So it was a 3-hour class, 1 day a week, 10 weeks. And each week, though, we had a different industry leader from their respective field come in and lecture. So a really cool way to take a class, as opposed to having the same person every week talk about things. We had a different guest lecturer each week. So at the end of the course, actually, the coordinator of the class was, asked, she's like, well, after you took this course, who would actually be interested in a career in this? And I'm like, I didn't even realize that was a thing. Most people don't. So I was like, all right, well, you could have a career in this. I was actually one of the few people that was like, I'm kind of interested in it. So that kind of piqued my interest when I was into the construction industry. So, in 2010, I did get out with a bachelor's in construction. Not a great time in the industry, as you know. It took me about 7 months to find a job, and that only really happened because, and this is kind of a good thing for networking, right? And connecting with people and staying connected. I was looking for jobs all over the place, living in my parents' basement. I had a degree. I wanted to get out of Maryland. I wanted to go anywhere. I was applying all over, and I couldn't find anything. It was that bad. But one of my old roommates was still in the major at Ohio State, and he had emailed me that there was an email bouncing around from the department about a project engineer, field engineer position with a multinational contractor in Fort Meade, so right down the road from me. So I was like, okay. So he's like, hey, I don't know where this is, but check it out. So I applied, and it turned out the guy who had forwarded the email and set up the job posting was an Ohio State alum living in Maryland in construction. So it just worked out that way. And I interviewed, and they were like, oh, great. You grew up here. You went to these schools that we're building, and you're right down the road, and we can pay you, like not much, but we can, we'll pay you a little bit and we'll teach you stuff. So I was like, yeah, sign me up, So you get out, you're not making the best money, but who cares? You got a job and you're learning. So, I mean, in the field, working the 12, 13-hour days as a project engineer. But I learned everything from, punch lists to change orders to bid solicitation, close out. I mean, anything they had, you named it, and I wanted to learn it. So that was a great part. A great experience and a good foot in the door, to kind of get into the industry. And they, like I said, they were a multinational contractor, but this team was about 12 people, and we did just schools. So I literally just worked from trailer to trailer. I never even went to the office in Virginia. But it was like a CM at risk almost. But that was a great experience, and that kind of, so you're like, all right, where does safety come into that? It's kind of fun. So, the last couple of years there, I spent 6 years with that company. Being a big company, their safety president, they didn't have too much safety management, right? So they had one guy, and he covered like 4 states. So we would probably see him once every 6 months if we were lucky. And that kind of, our team was like, it's kind of, we don't like that. Is anyone interested in getting into a safety role? And I'm like, well, yeah. I got the OSHA 30. I have the interest. So my senior PM was like, okay, we'll send you some courses. So he ended up sending me to get my OSHA 500, which is an instructor level course. So you can teach the 10 and 30-hour courses. They sent me to get the first aid CPR AED train the trainer, and actually even paid for I have a graduate certificate in occupational safety, which I got online. So that was pretty cool that they were willing to do all that and invest that in me. And they saw that I was interested. So, and then after I got all that, like the last year, they started putting out feelers like, hey, he's looking for a full-time safety role. But it just didn't pan out with that company. They never really took that and transferred me over. So I had a buddy that worked at that company who went to a local GC, and they were hiring for a safety, like entry-level safety. And he was like, hey, I don't know if you're looking right now, but, we got a position. So I interviewed with them, and they were like, we like your CM background, and we know you don't have much safety experience, but we're willing to teach you. And that's kind of the real foot in the door that got me to where I am, and they always say it's hard to find a position unless you have experience, right? And that's pretty true. Right. But in construction, especially in Baltimore and Maryland, the local markets, the more people and the more connected you are, the better the chances you have. I will talk about that, but that really gives you the leg up when it comes into getting into the work. So I spent a couple of years with them, and that's kind of, after about 2 years with them, I got into where I am now with Barton Malow Builders.
Great. So you just mentioned connections that you've made, networking that you've done. Correct. Have you had a mentor in your life? And if so, how have they shaped your career?
It's hard to say, I've had one specific mentor. I've had quite a few, which is great. I've been very fortunate to have a handful of them throughout my career. One of them you've actually interviewed for this podcast, Meredith Sullivan with Loyola.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, we're great friends. She was actually my wedding. So yeah,
oh, wow.
Great. And I used to work with her years ago. So at a firm, architecture firm. So she was a great mentor. Another one would probably be my old professor and friend, Brandy Shepard. So she's at Anne Arundel Community College. She's a great industry leader and professor over there, still there. I actually stay in touch and lecture with her for her CM courses every fall. So I've done that the last 3 years. Yep. Mm-hmm. And at Barton Malow, I'd definitely have to say, I've only been here 2 years, met a lot of great people, but my fellow safety manager, Mark, in Richmond, we have 2 Virginia safety managers, and he's been nothing but a wealth of knowledge. He was actually, his story was kind of cool. He was a mason for like 20, 30 years before he got into safety. And believe me, if there's an injury or something weird that happened, it happened to him. So he's got a real life story, for all that. And it's kind of funny, mm-hmm. You laugh, but it's like, they do make great safety professionals when they've been there and maybe they've had things happen to them or seen a lot of stuff. Cause it's like, all right, I've seen it, right? So I didn't read it from a book. I was in it. So he's been a great resource and mentor where I can call them all. I can call him whenever I have that oddball question or just events sometimes. We stay in contact. He actually ended up here for a few days, like 3 days when I started, to kind of get me acquainted to the area and to all the projects. So, with all 3 of them, they've got tons of industry experience, that makes them priceless connections and colleagues. They're always willing to take that time out to explain things or recommend ways that I can better myself or, my career path. So, But like finding a mentor can really help shape your career in many ways. I mean, from calling on them, say, hey, can I get a letter of recommendation, or being a job reference? That's a good thing, right? To having connections in the local industry to help get your foot in the door. We talked about that earlier. I mean, Meredith actually ended up getting, I think she was the one that forwarded me the internship posting when I was in college to work on that retail job. She had knew people at that company and was like, hey, they're looking for interns. So the more people know, the more you connect with, the better the chances, right? So I do still stay in touch with all of them, even if not to pick their brains, just to call them and say, how you been? What are you doing? What's new? So.
And you mentioned Barton Malow a couple of times. What has it been like to work for a company like Barton Malow?
It's been wonderful. I mean, I've been here just over 2 years now. So I spent 2 years with that previous contractor as a safety coordinator, and then I jumped over to Barton Malow. But I mean, it's been great. I mean, I came from that small contractor with about 3 other safety professionals, to a national team, right, with 50 safety professionals and 2,500 employees nationwide. So quite an adjustment, especially when I'm the only one in the state. They're like, okay, well, you're going to report to us in Michigan, and if you need stuff, call, right? So it was quite an adjustment, not having the local safety team, but knowing that I do have that full support from the president to the director of safety, and all the way down through legal, marketing, and having all those resources. It's so great to have. If you need a lawyer, or if you need somebody insurance and risk, you call them. I mean, we have so many people that support us in what we do. That's been a real benefit. They give you the tools and the support that you need, and then they help you excel in any way you can. So they're really a strong presence in every community where we work. Our core values or mantra is people, projects, and communities. So that's been really cool. Every spring we do a community involvement and volunteer event. We spend all week and we go out and do different things, food drives, landscaping. So that's been really cool that they do that. I mean, and they allow you to go out that whole week and help the community. So everyone's been great to work with. They truly care about each other, the team, the clients. So I'm really excited to see where the future takes me with them, and because we got a ton of upcoming work. I mean, despite all these material challenges and COVID things that are going on, right, we've got a ton of good work coming up. So, I mean, I love it.
Awesome. This is a question that I ask every podcast guest, and it's something that we talk about a lot on the podcast and at MCCI in general. But what should the industry be doing to entice young people?
That's a good question. So, I mean, so they need to give incentives and training to get these young people into the industry, right? Because there's a ton of people retiring, right, and just getting out of the industry for different reasons, just age, or some leaving early for you don't want to do it anymore. It is demanding on the body, okay? But I think like VOTEC programs, STEM programs, or internships are a good start, and getting involved with the high schools, right? Like I said, Andrew Undle, the director, came over. It was got to us at senior high school. It was like, hey, we have a program. Come in, Actually, Andrew Undle is opening a trade school, I think this spring or summer, I read, which is really cool for welders, electricians, plumbers. They got a whole school just for that. So you can go right in, learn it, and come out with a trade. So aside from providing the tools and training, let them get out there and do the work. So show them the fruits of their labor. Barton Malow actually has a program called Boot Camp in Detroit, and I've been talking with them about trying to get it down in Baltimore, and there has been discussions about that. But anyway, Boot Camp, it gives people ages 18 to 24 the tools and training through employment on our project sites in Michigan. So what it is, it's a 6-week program spread across multiple trades. So civil, interior work, steel and concrete, and you go out, they give you the tools and training, and you spend that 6 weeks doing that trade and learning. And if it works for you, you have the option, or we could hire you on full time, where you're free to kind of take your tools and trade and go elsewhere. So that's a really cool thing they do with Detroit. And they are, like I said, kind of interested in getting it down to Baltimore. I think it'd be a really beneficial program down here. But yeah, like I said, the need is stronger than ever. The work there's plenty of work, and I'm talking to subs all the time. They're like, I can't find guys. And if they do find them, they'll work for a little bit and leave, or quit, or don't show up. So that's the hard thing, is finding people with, the determination and just the will to go to work and want to be a reliable employee. Being reliable and wanting to learn is a big thing. And those things will get you far. but you got to show up and you got to be there and reliable to do that. And yeah, most trades can be hard on the body. A lot of guys joke like, I probably wouldn't do this again. But, at the end of the day, they love what they do, and the salary and benefits are great. And the feeling of accomplishment and seeing the buildings, right? Hey, I worked on that project. You drive by it, or that one's been there for a while, and you work on that. It's a pretty cool feeling, I think. And I always regret not doing that. In high school, they talked about, hey, go out in the summer and swing a hammer and, put some rafters up, work with a framer. I don't know why I never got into that, and I kind of regret not doing that. But that would have been a cool thing to do as well, to kind of get hands-on experience, or just go out and be an apprentice, or a helper, during your summer, and get your hands on if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, and listening to your story, obviously, you've mentioned how once you're in the industry, you can take your career really anywhere. Can you just talk about, what the construction industry offers in terms of maneuverability?
Yeah, so the lateral movement opportunities in this industry are endless. We just had a group huddle call last week, and it was a girl was talking about how she had started right out of college in VDC, virtual design, right, out of our Michigan office, and she kind of saw the field aspect and was like, hey, I kind of want to get into that and the construction management side. And we have a big project out in Arizona right now that just started. It's a electric motor car plant, a big one, and they were having not problems, but just hard when it's a new market for us. So we had a joint ventured, but they needed to bring a bunch of people from Michigan out there, and they were like, hey, well, if you're willing to travel, we'll send you out there, and you can basically intern for a little bit and try the project engineer role out. And she did, and she loved it. And she's been out there ever since, and as a project engineer, and they hired her full time, and she switched from VDC to project engineer, so it's not like overnight, but I mean, a lot of companies like that, bigger companies, will give you the opportunity, especially when there's a need out there and they need someone young that's able to learn and want to learn. And she was the definition of, eager and young and ready to go. So she did that. So that's a good example. And like I said, I started in CM, switched to safety. I got a guy that was in Florida as a safety manager, and he just moved up to North Carolina. We're doing the Carolina Panthers training facility and field. Yep. And he actually just switched over to quality control as a field manager. It's like a CM role. So he went from safety into him. That was kind of where he won. He liked it for a while, and he plateaued, and he said, I'm going this route. And they were able to support that and train him, and he loves it. So it's kind of cool. I mean, there's so many aspects to construction, right? From inspections to quality to field management to project management, estimating, the office side, accounting, right? There's so many different aspects that you can pretty easily, switch over if you have the desire, right, and the willingness to learn. And hopefully a company that supports that and is able to support that for you. But you've got to, like they say at our company, you have to be able to jump in and be willing to get outside of your comfort zone, because a lot of people don't like change, right? I mean, nobody wants to change, but if you have that desire, then they're willing to help you open those doors to different avenues in the industry. We actually have a thing too. I remember our chief executive officer last year when he came out prior to COVID and was talking about, hey, we got projects all over. If you want to up and move your whole family to a project for 2 years, call me. We've got plenty of stuff all over the country. So that's what I love about it. I mean, there's opportunities out there, but they're not going to make you move. So I've got a family and a kid, and right now it's not what I want to do. Who knows? Maybe in 15 years, maybe we do. But that's cool that they do that. Hey, you want to uproot for a couple years, go for it. They'll support you. And some companies do like internship rotations too, or like project engineer rotations, where you'll spend couple months here in estimating, couple months in pre-con, couple months in field management. So that's kind of cool. We kind of do that with the interns as well, to give them a good feel, a little bit of a taste of each area. We have a pretty good internship program as well. Every summer we bring in, I think last summer we had 5, even with COVID, we had 5 interns.
Nice.
Yeah. Plenty of opportunities.
And then as a wrap up for you, if there's a young person listening to this podcast and they're listening to your story and say, well, maybe, safety management might be for me, what steps do they need to take?
So I'd highly recommend being in some sort of construction field or in the field first, whether that be like a CM or general contractor, before you get full time into safety. Because it really does help. And having my background of being able to read the drawings and know how things go together in a way, it helps you, go out there and talk to the teams about doing it safely, right? Because you can't just read a book and say, hey, you're not doing that safe when that guy's been, doing that work for 30 years, right? So you have to really understand the concepts, the schedule, the budget, and all that, how it ties together before you kind of want to implement and enforce safety. I think is a good route. Don't get me wrong. There's ways to get into safety from an associate's or bachelor's degree. You can certainly go that route as well if you're really interested. And if you think about it in high school, like, hey, I'm going to go get a 4-year degree in occupational safety. You can certainly do that. And there's different routes. I mean, industrial, commercial, right? Mining, maritime, right? So you can go that route, but I'd highly recommend some sort of construction background, or at least maybe working in the field, right? Getting an apprenticeship, maybe being an electrician, carpenter, whatnot for a little while. But other ways you can get involved in your local groups, ABC, AGC, LinkedIn groups, right? And internships. Take all the training courses that you can. And if you can get someone to pay for it, go, get them to help pay for it, because a lot of this stuff costs money, a good bit of money. So if you can get support from a contractor or a company, do it, right? Get your first aid CPR card, get your OSHA 10, 30-hour, one of those two, right? And just go out and work those positions and soak it all in. The earlier, the better, because the more experience you get, the more people you meet, right? The more you connect with, and then the more opportunities that are available for you. But yeah. And you can certainly reach out to me too as well if you like. I'm always willing to help people get into the industry. I'm I appreciate the opportunity, because you don't get too many people that want to talk to safety managers. It's kind of like, they're like, the safety guy's here, right? So there's an old stigma, I'm here for a bad reason, right? But it's not that. Yeah, it's a cultural thing, and the new waves. There's never been more of a demand right now for safety than before. I assure you, the jobs are out there. It's plentiful. And there's plenty of good stuff in the pipeline. So if you're interested, it's certainly a great path to get into.
Yep, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate you joining the show.
All right. Thanks so much, Matt.
If you want to learn more about Build Your Path podcast or the built environment overall, go ahead and visit buildyourpath.org. Another big thank you to our guest, Ryan Monahan from Barton Malow. Once again, this episode was brought to you by Carter Machinery. Build Your Path podcasts are produced by the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation. I'm Matt Pine. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.